My sister hired private investigators to prove I was lying about my successful life after cutting off our toxic family. She planned to expose me as a fraud at Grandma's birthday dinner, but their faces went pale when the investigators' report hit the table and revealed the truth. Can you imagine your own sister hiring a private investigator to expose you as a failure at your grandmother's 80th birthday? She was so convinced I was struggling after I cut them off, but she had no idea how spectacularly her cruel plan was about to backfire. Trust me, the look on her face when she realized her entire scheme had blown up in her face? Yeah, that still brings a wicked smile to my face. 5 years ago, at 32, I finally did what I needed to do. I walked away from my toxic family to save my sanity. Since then, I'd built a thriving tech company in San Francisco, while in their warped reality, I was supposedly flailing. My sister, Jessica, was so utterly convinced I was lying about my success that she literally hired a private investigator. Her goal? To expose me as a fraud, right there, in front of everyone, at my sweet grandma Eleanor's big birthday bash. What she didn't realize was that her desperate attempt at public humiliation was about to become my ultimate, undeniable victory. If you've ever had to draw a hard line with family for your own mental health, drop a comment below and tell me where you're listening from. And please, hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more stories like this. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in what looked like a perfectly normal, middle-class family. My dad, William, was an account manager, and my mom, Patricia, taught 3rd grade. There was my older sister, Jessica, me, and my younger brother, Ethan. We had a colonial house, a neat lawn, even a golden retriever named Scout. To anyone looking in, we were the ideal American family. But behind closed doors, it was a completely different story. My dad was what therapists call a high-functioning alcoholic. He never missed work, kept his professional reputation spotless. But at home, every night, he'd drink bourbon until his words slurred and his temper flared. His verbal jabs started subtly, backhanded compliments, jokes at my expense. But as I hit my teens, it morphed into outright criticism, sometimes rage-fueled tirades. "You'll never amount to anything with that attitude," became his go-to line, especially when I dared to express an opinion or show enthusiasm for something he didn't approve of. My mom. She was the family's chief enabler. Instead of protecting us, she'd smooth things over. "Your father works very hard to provide for this family," she'd insist, after he'd reduced me to tears. "He doesn't mean what he says when he's stressed." Her way of dealing with dysfunction was pure denial, all wrapped up in a false peace. Problems weren't solved. They were swept under the rug to maintain this illusion of harmony. Then there was Jessica, 3 years older, the undisputed golden child. She quickly learned how to navigate Dad's moods and Mom's denial. She figured out that if she joined in my father's criticism of me or Ethan, she'd get praise and protection. She was a master at twisting situations to make herself look good, always at our expense. "Mike was just jealous because I got better grades," she'd tell our parents when they questioned why I was upset. The truth? She'd sabotaged my science project the night before it was due. Our extended family remained blissfully unaware. During holiday gatherings at Grandma Eleanor's, we'd perform our perfect family charade with practiced precision. Dad would limit his drinking to keep up appearances. Mom would expertly steer conversations to highlight Jessica's achievements. We'd all smile for photos, destined for mantles and albums, preserving the fiction of our happy family. The favoritism started early and was reinforced constantly. When Jessica made the volleyball team, my parents were at every game, threw a huge party. When I won the regional math competition, my dad was too busy with work, and my mom suggested we keep it low-key since Jessica was studying for finals. "Don't be so sensitive," Mom would always say. "Your sister just happens to be going through an important time." Every single accomplishment of mine seemed to trigger some family crisis that conveniently diverted all attention. When I got into an advanced science program, Dad mysteriously lost a client that same day, and the family discussion centered on his stress, not my achievement. When I earned a perfect score on my SATs, Jessica coincidentally had a minor car accident, and my news was totally forgotten in the drama. My younger brother, Ethan, and I formed this unspoken alliance, two scapegoats navigating the chaos together. He was quieter, which our parents saw as a lack of ambition compared to Jessica. We'd escape to the park or library, carving out small pockets of peace away from the toxic environment at home. The first major incident that truly clarified our family dynamic happened when I was 16. After months of extra study, late nights building my project, I won first place in the state science competition. My program analyzed weather patterns to predict microclimatic changes. The event was at the state university, 2 hours away. My mom came, but had to leave right after the awards to drive Jessica to a college tour. My dad had promised to come, but texted that morning he was under the weather, his code for a hangover. When I got home, trophy and scholarship check in hand, Dad was watching football, bourbon in hand, looking perfectly fine. "Good job, I guess," he mumbled, not looking up. Though these science competitions aren't really competitive, they just give awards to everybody these days. Jessica, back from her college tour, picked up the trophy and smirked. The real scientists are probably saving their projects for national competitions. But this is cute for a high school thing. My mom just busied herself in the kitchen. "Don't leave that trophy on the coffee table, Mike. And remember to write thank you notes." Standing there, my achievement literally and figuratively diminished in my hands. Something in me snapped. I realized, with painful clarity, that this pattern would never change. No achievement of mine would ever earn genuine recognition from them. That night, I researched college scholarships with a fierce, new determination to escape. UCLA's campus felt like finally breathing fresh air after years in a smoke-filled room. Thanks to my science victory and good grades, I got a substantial scholarship. My parents chipped in the bare minimum, just enough to not look negligent to relatives, making sure to remind me constantly of their financial sacrifice. In the dorms, I met Alex, a laid-back music major. Within a week, he'd asked me more questions about my interests and aspirations than my family had in my entire life. Our room became a safe space. In my computer science classes, I found my passion and peers who shared it. Study sessions with my project partner, Rachel, became highlights. She was so creative, a perfect complement to my methodical style. When I solved a particularly challenging algorithm, her excited, "That's brilliant, Mike," was so genuine it nearly brought tears to my eyes. I wasn't used to praise without conditions. The distance let me see how truly abnormal my family dynamics had been. My friends talked about calling their parents for advice. That was totally foreign to me. When Alex's parents visited, treating us both to dinner, showing genuine interest in my studies, I felt this confusing mix of gratitude and overwhelming grief for what I'd never had. Holiday visits home became excruciating. Freshman year, I returned excited about my programming projects. Jessica, now in her second year of law school, dominated every conversation with stories of her prestigious internships. When I finally shared my excitement about a coding competition our team had won, my father snorted. "Computer stuff is just glorified typing. Not like Jessica actually having to understand complex legal precedents." My mom nodded. "Though I'm sure your little computer games are fun, too, Mike." By Christmas, I'd learned to keep my achievements to myself. I brought schoolwork to avoid interaction, limited my stay to 4 days. Every visit was the same: awkward politeness, then familiar criticism and dismissal. The summer after sophomore year, I got a coveted internship at a San Francisco tech startup. My mentor, Professor David Thompson, recommended me. He'd seen my work and taken me under his wing, offering extra projects and valuable guidance. "You have exceptional talent, Mike," he told me. "Your approach to solving problems is intuitive yet rigorous, exactly what the industry needs." His genuine belief in me was disorienting at first. I kept waiting for the criticism, but it never came. He connected me with alumni, helped refine my resume. That internship changed everything. Working with real developers, I thrived. My supervisor, Marcus, became another mentor, teaching me technical skills, professional navigation, and self-advocacy. When my parents called, conversations were brief, superficial. Dad was annoyed I wasn't working a local summer job. Mom worried San Francisco was changing my values. Jessica, of course, mentioned a law school friend whose brother tried the tech thing but couldn't handle the pressure. By junior year, I had firm boundaries. I'd hang up if Dad started drinking and got abusive. I limited calls to once a week, deflected invitations. These boundaries were met with resistance disguised as concern. "Your father misses you," Mom would say, though he never came to the phone. "The family thinks you've become very distant," Jessica would report, implying I was being judged. Graduation from UCLA with honors should have been a triumphant moment. Professor Thompson helped me land a job at a respected software company in San Francisco with an incredible starting salary. My final project won departmental recognition, and I was selected to speak at the computer science ceremony. My parents attended the main commencement but skipped my departmental event. They left immediately after the general ceremony, explaining they needed to attend a dinner celebrating Jessica passing the bar exam. "We're sure your computer friends will appreciate your talk," my mother said, patting my arm. "And Jessica's accomplishment is just so significant. You understand." Standing in my gown, watching them leave early for Jessica, I finally accepted a truth I'd been fighting for years. Nothing I achieved would ever be enough for them. The realization was both painful and incredibly liberating. As I turned back to join my classmates and mentors, who genuinely celebrated my success, I felt the first real stirrings of independence. My first job was as a software developer for Horizon Technologies. The work was challenging, rewarding. My team lead, Sophia, recognized my potential, gave me increasingly complex projects. I delivered consistently, ahead of schedule. Within 18 months, I got my first promotion to senior developer, a substantial raise, stock options. I moved into my own studio, started building a social circle, even began dating again. Most importantly, I started therapy with Dr. Sarah Winters, a specialist in family trauma. Our weekly sessions helped me understand that what I'd experienced wasn't normal family friction, but a pattern of emotional abuse and scapegoating. Dr. Winters introduced me to concepts like golden child/scapegoat dynamics and narcissistic family systems. "What you're describing," she explained, "is not just strict parenting or typical sibling rivalry. The consistent diminishing of your accomplishments while elevating your sisters is a form of emotional abuse that can have lasting impacts on your self-worth." This validation was both painful and incredibly healing. I grieved for the childhood support I never received, while learning tools to recognize my own worth, independent of family. During this period, contact with family was minimal but cordial, monthly calls with Mom, occasional texts with Ethan, now in college, Christmas cards, birthday gifts from a distance. Dad rarely came to the phone. Jessica and I communicated mostly through group family messages. Then came my father's retirement party. Despite reservations, I took time off, flew to Portland, arrived with an expensive bottle of scotch, playing the role of the successful son returning home. The event was at an upscale restaurant. For the first hour, everything was superficially pleasant. Then, during the toasts, Dad had consumed enough alcohol to lower his inhibitions. "And here's my son, Mike," he announced, gesturing with his sloshing glass. Finally decided his family was worth his precious time. Made quite a name for himself playing with computers in San Francisco. His tone made playing with computers sound childish and insignificant. Jessica smoothly joined in. "We're all so impressed Mike can afford to visit, considering how expensive San Francisco is. Though I imagine sharing an apartment with roommates helps cut costs." This was a deliberate mischaracterization. I'd mentioned my studio apartment multiple times. When I tried to correct her, Mom touched my arm and whispered, "Please don't make a scene. This is your father's special day." The pattern continued. Dad made increasingly cutting remarks about my career, my moving away, even my clothing. Jessica supported each criticism with subtle agreement or barbs disguised as concern. Mom alternated between nervous laughter and begging me not to take things so personally. I excused myself before dessert, went back to my hotel, and spent the night questioning why I kept subjecting myself to this. The next morning, after a sleepless night, I called my father, intending to address what had happened. "You embarrassed me in front of my colleagues," he accused before I could speak. "Leaving early like that made it look like there's something wrong with our family." When I tried to explain how his comments had hurt me, he dismissed it all. "You've always been oversensitive. This is why you'll never make it in the real business world, too thin-skinned." Jessica called next, ostensibly to help resolve things. "Dad didn't mean anything by it," she insisted. "You know how he gets when he's celebrating. You're making this all about you when it was his retirement party." When I pointed out specific hurtful comments, she sighed dramatically. "That's not what he meant, and you know it. You're twisting his words because you've always been jealous of our relationship." My mother's call completed the trifecta of invalidation. "Please apologize to your father, Mike. He worked so hard all these years to provide for us, and now this special occasion is ruined because you took everything the wrong way. I could hear Ethan in the background, but he remained silent, unwilling or unable to speak up, a response I understood all too well. That evening, I met with Dr. Winters for an emergency session. She helped me see that this pattern would continue indefinitely unless I made a significant change. You keep hoping for different results from the same interactions, she noted gently. But based on everything you've shared, your family has shown no capacity for self-reflection or change. Over the next 2 weeks, I carefully considered my options. Limited contact hadn't protected me. I wrote out pros and cons, consulted with Dr. Winters, and ultimately made the painful decision to cut ties completely. I composed a careful letter. After considerable thought and consultation with my therapist, I've decided to discontinue contact with you for the foreseeable future. Years of criticism, dismissal of my feelings, and minimization of my accomplishments have taken a significant toll on my mental health. Despite multiple attempts to communicate these issues, nothing has changed. I'm not writing this out of anger or spite, but out of self-preservation. I need to focus on building a healthy life without the constant emotional drain of our current dynamic. Please respect my decision by not contacting me. I've blocked your numbers and email addresses to help maintain this boundary. I wish you well, but I need to move forward separately. I sent copies to my parents and Jessica, but wrote separately to Ethan, explaining my decision and offering to maintain our relationship. I also sent a brief note to Grandma Eleanor, letting her know I was well, but needed distance. The response was exactly what Dr. Winters had prepared me for. My father sent a raging email, calling me selfish and ungrateful before I could block him. My mother left tearful voicemails about tearing the family apart. Jessica posted passive-aggressive social media updates about toxic people who abandoned family. I blocked them all, as planned, and weathered the initial storm of emotions: guilt, doubt, grief, and ultimately, relief. The first holiday season without family obligations was strange, yes, but also incredibly liberating. I accepted an invitation from Rachel, now working at a tech firm in Berkeley, to join her family for Thanksgiving. Her parents' genuine interest in my life gave me a bittersweet glimpse of what family support could look like. For Christmas, a group of friends and I rented a cabin in Lake Tahoe, starting new traditions with people who actually valued my presence. Dr. Winters helped me process the complex emotions, the grief for what I never had, the relief from what I no longer had to endure. Healing isn't linear, she'd remind me. You can be thriving in your new life and still feel echoes of old wounds. That's completely normal. Occasionally, messages would come through extended family. Grandma sent birthday cards directly to my apartment. An aunt would email with family news. And Ethan, once safely established at college, began texting regularly. Our shared experience created a bond that survived the distance. The most surprising effect of cutting ties was how quickly my career and personal growth accelerated without the constant undertow of family criticism. Free from the emotional labor of managing toxic relationships, I found energy for creative projects, deeper friendships, and eventually, the courage to pursue my entrepreneurial ambitions. About 9 months after cutting ties, I attended a cybersecurity conference. During a panel discussion, I asked a question that challenged the conventional approach. Afterward, a tall guy with glasses and a Boston accent approached me. That was exactly what I was thinking, but didn't have the guts to ask, he said, introducing himself as Daniel Kaplan, lead security architect at a fintech company. Want to grab coffee and continue destroying their arguments? That coffee meeting changed everything. Daniel and I discovered we shared not only technical perspectives, but a vision for a different approach to data security, one that was proactive rather than reactive. Over several meetings, we sketched out a framework for a software security solution that could identify potential breaches before they occurred. The current systems are all about building higher walls, Daniel explained. But what if we could create something that acts more like an immune system, constantly adapting to new threats? By our 5th meeting, we were coding, developing a prototype during nights and weekends. The potential of our idea became clear as the prototype demonstrated effectiveness against simulated attacks that bypassed traditional security measures. 6 months in, we faced a crucial decision. Continuing part-time would take years. Full-time meant leaving secure jobs, reliable incomes. I have savings for about 8 months, I calculated. Longer if I downsize. Daniel nodded. About the same for me. We need to secure funding within that window. The old voice in my head, the one that sounded suspiciously like my father, warned that leaving a stable job was irresponsible, doomed to failure. But therapy helped me recognize those intrusive thoughts for what they were, echoes of past criticism, not accurate assessments of reality. 2 weeks later, we both resigned and incorporated our company, Sentinel Systems. We converted Daniel's spare bedroom into our office, working 12 to 14-hour days refining our prototype, preparing our investor pitch. Our first 5 investor meetings ended in rejection. Too speculative, too early stage, market too competitive. Each no tested my resolve, triggering echoes of family criticism. After particularly difficult meetings, I'd hear Jessica's voice. Did you really think you could compete with established companies? Or my father's dismissive tone. This is what happens when you don't understand the real business world. Dr. Winters helped me develop techniques to counter these thoughts, to recognize them as manifestations of past conditioning rather than reality. Your family's assessments were never about your actual capabilities, she reminded me. They were about maintaining the family dynamic that served them. Our 6th investor meeting was with Jennifer Wu of Horizon Capital, known for backing security startups. Unlike previous investors, who had glazed over during technical explanations, Jennifer asked incisive questions. You're addressing a blind spot in current security paradigms, she noted. I'm particularly impressed by your adaptive response mechanism. 3 follow-up meetings and extensive due diligence later, Horizon Capital offered us $750,000 in seed funding for 12% equity. The validation wasn't just financial. It was confirmation from an industry expert that our vision had merit. With funding secured, we leased a small office in San Francisco's Soma district, hired our first 2 employees, and set an aggressive 6-month timeline for our minimum viable product. I became the technical lead. Daniel focused on business development. The product development phase tested everything: my technical skills, leadership, resilience, stress management. There were setbacks, nights I slept on the office couch. But through it all, I discovered a resilience I hadn't known I possessed. Without my family's voices undermining my confidence, I found myself making decisions more quickly, trusting my instincts. When I succeeded, I felt proud. When I failed, I learned without self-condemnation and moved forward. 18 months after founding Sentinel Systems, we launched our flagship product to positive industry reviews. A major healthcare system became our first client, then a regional bank and 3 tech companies. Each successful implementation led to referrals and industry attention. Our team grew to 15 people, then to 35 by year 3. As we expanded, we secured a second round of funding. $4.5 million at a valuation that made my ownership stake worth more on paper than I'd expected to earn in a decade of traditional employment. Success brought external validation my family would have recognized: premium office space, features in industry publications, acquisition offers. I bought a modern condo overlooking the bay, drove a luxury car I actually enjoyed. But the most meaningful aspects of my success had nothing to do with finances or status. I developed a leadership style deliberately opposite of my father's, focused on recognizing contributions, constructive feedback, creating a workplace where people felt valued. Our company culture became known for collaboration and innovation, not fear. My personal life flourished too. I started dating Catherine, a content marketing director. Unlike previous relationships where I'd been guarded, with Catherine I was open about my family estrangement. Her acceptance and understanding. She'd weathered her own family difficulties, deepened our connection. My circle of close friends expanded to include people from various walks of life who shared my values. We celebrated holidays, supported each other, creating the chosen family I'd always needed. Throughout this growth, I maintained therapy with Dr. Winters. We reduced frequency, but she helped me navigate the complex emotions that still arose: occasional guilt, sadness during holidays, anger that surfaced unexpectedly. Healing isn't linear, she'd always say. My biological family contact remained minimal. Ethan and I spoke regularly as he finished college and started his environmental science career. He shared family news sparingly, respecting my boundaries. I sent cards to Grandma Eleanor, occasionally including photos of my life. She responded with brief, warm notes, never pressuring me to reconnect. Invitations to family events came through various channels, an aunt, my mother through Ethan, even Jessica through high school acquaintances on social media. I declined all of them, politely but firmly, protecting the peace I'd worked so hard to establish. Until, that is, the invitation to Grandma Eleanor's 80th birthday. This would be different. This would change everything. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. My cousin Thomas's name appeared on my phone, unusual. "Mike, I thought you should know something," Thomas said after brief pleasantries. "Jessica has hired a private investigator to follow you." The statement was so unexpected I thought I'd misheard. "She what?" Thomas explained that at a recent family dinner, Jessica had boasted about hiring a professional to get the real story about my life. According to her, I'd fabricated my success and was actually struggling, too proud to admit it. "She's telling everyone you're living in some shared apartment, probably working retail or something, but pretending to be a successful tech entrepreneur," Thomas continued. "She says she's going to expose the truth at Grandma Eleanor's birthday dinner." I felt a complex wave of emotions: violation at the invasion of privacy, anger at the accusations, and strangely, a touch of amusement at how completely wrong her assumptions were. "Thanks for the heads up, Thomas. I appreciate you letting me know." After the call, I canceled my remaining meetings and went for a long walk along the Embarcadero, processing this. By the time I reached the ferry building, I decided to call an emergency strategy session with my closest confidants. That evening, Daniel and Rachel came to my condo. I explained the situation over Thai takeout. "So, your sister hired an actual private investigator? Like, with a trench coat?" Daniel asked, half amused, half outraged. Rachel was less entertained. "That's a serious invasion of privacy, Mike. You could probably take legal action." I shook my head. "I don't want to escalate this legally, but I do need to decide how to respond." We outlined 3 approaches: ignore it and continue no contact, confront Jessica directly before the event, or attend and let her plan play out. "If you ignore it, she controls the narrative to your extended family," Rachel pointed out. Daniel nodded. "And a direct confrontation just gives her time to revise her approach." By the end of the evening, I'd made my decision. I would attend Grandma's birthday dinner, my first family event in years. I'd face whatever Jessica had planned, not for revenge, not for vindication, but to honor my grandmother, and because I refused to hide from false accusations. Grandma Eleanor's 80th birthday was 6 weeks away, scheduled at an upscale restaurant in Portland. The invitation came directly from her, not through my parents, a small detail that touched me deeply. "It would mean the world to have all my grandchildren present," she'd written in her elegant handwriting. As the date approached, Ethan called with warnings. "Mom and Dad are being weird about you coming," he reported. "They keep saying they want to reconnect, but then make these passive-aggressive comments about you needing to admit your mistakes." "And Jessica?" I asked. Ethan laughed without humor, acting smug. "Says she has a surprise that will change everything. I think she actually believes you're a failure, and she's going to enjoy exposing you." I spent the weeks preparing mentally and emotionally. Sessions with Dr. Winters focused on maintaining boundaries, managing triggers, practicing responses. "Remember that you're choosing to attend from a position of strength, not obligation," she emphasized. "You can leave at any point if the situation becomes unhealthy." Meanwhile, completely unknown to my family, Sentinel Systems was featured in a major industry magazine as one of the 20 most innovative security startups in the country. The article included photos of our office, growth statistics, and a profile of me as co-founder. The timing couldn't have been more perfect or more ironic, given Jessica's investigation. Through Ethan, I learned that the private investigator had been thorough, perhaps more thorough than Jessica had anticipated or budgeted for. Following me to our office, taking photos of my condo and car, even attempting to interview employees under the guise of a corporate security survey. What truly amused me was knowing exactly what this investigation would reveal, not the failure Jessica anticipated, but verifiable success beyond what I'd ever shared with my family. According to Thomas, Jessica had been building anticipation, telling our parents I was living in a shared apartment in a questionable neighborhood, probably working an entry-level position somewhere, too ashamed to admit my tech company had failed. My parents apparently believed this narrative entirely, telling relatives they were concerned about Mike's delusions of success. The disconnect between their perception and reality was so vast, it had moved beyond hurtful to almost comical. The family who had never believed in me was now investing significant effort to prove I wasn't successful, at the precise moment my success had become objectively undeniable. The day before the dinner, I flew to Portland, choosing a downtown hotel rather than staying with family. That evening, Ethan and I met for coffee, our first in-person meeting in nearly 3 years. "You look good," he said, studying my face. "Confident. California agrees with you." We spent 2 hours catching up, sharing details beyond texts and calls. Ethan had grown into himself, developing his own boundaries with our parents, finding his path in environmental science. Before we parted, he asked hesitantly, "Are you nervous about tomorrow?" I considered the question carefully. Not nervous, exactly. I know who I am now, and what I've built. Their opinion can't change that. "Jessica is going to be shocked," Ethan predicted with a small smile. "She's been so sure you're failing." My last call that night was to Dr. Winters. A brief check-in to ground myself. "Validation from people who were never able to see you clearly isn't worth seeking," she said gently. "Whatever happens tomorrow, your worth isn't determined by their reaction." With those words, I prepared for a dinner that would either change everything or confirm that nothing had really changed at all. The private dining room at Riverside Grill overlooked the Willamette River, late afternoon sunlight reflecting off the water. I arrived exactly on time, pausing at the entrance to observe the gathering. 15 people were arranged around an elegantly set table. Aunts, uncles, cousins, my parents, Jessica, Ethan, and at the head, Grandma Eleanor, regal in a blue dress with a pearl necklace. Ethan spotted me first, his subtle nod acknowledging my presence before anyone else noticed. Then my grandmother looked up, her face brightening with a genuine smile that contrasted sharply with the frozen expressions of my parents and sister as they registered my arrival. "Michael," my grandmother called warmly, using my full name as she always had. Come in, come in. I saved you a seat right here." She patted the chair to her left, a position of honor that didn't go unnoticed by Jessica, whose tight smile couldn't mask her displeasure. My father nodded stiffly. My mother performed an awkward half-rise before settling back down. Jessica merely watched with calculating eyes as I kissed my grandmother's cheek and took my place. "You look wonderful," I told my grandmother truthfully. "It suits you. Flattery will get you everywhere," she replied with a wink, then turned to include others in our conversation. The initial interactions followed predictable patterns, polite small talk layered over obvious tension. Relatives who hadn't seen me in years asked superficial questions about San Francisco, carefully avoiding any mention of my estrangement. "The weather must be nice in California," my Aunt Margaret offered. "Much more temperate than Portland." "True," I agreed, "though I miss the greenery sometimes." My father cleared his throat. Mike certainly made his choice about what was important to him. The comment was designed to introduce my absence while maintaining plausible deniability. My mother jumped in with her familiar peacekeeping. "We're just happy to all be together for Mom's birthday. Isn't that right, William?" Throughout the appetizer course, Jessica remained uncharacteristically quiet, occasionally checking her phone under the table, exchanging meaningful glances with my father. The anticipation of her planned exposure was palpable. As the main course was served, conversation turned to family updates, a cousin's new baby, an uncle's retirement, Ethan's recent job offer from an environmental research center. When attention inevitably shifted to me, I gave a deliberately modest overview of my work. "I co-founded a cybersecurity company a few years ago. We're doing well, growing steadily." Jessica finally broke her silence with a carefully casual question. "And where are you living these days, Mike? Still in that apartment you shared with roommates?" The trap was so obvious, I almost smiled. "I have my own place now. It suits me." "Must be expensive in San Francisco," my father commented, exchanging a knowing look with Jessica. "Especially on a startup salary," my mother added with forced brightness. "We worry about you out there all alone. The family business always has a place for you if things don't work out." The family business was my father's brother's insurance agency, where Jessica had worked summers. A place that had never actually offered me employment. I could feel the narrative they had constructed. Poor Mike. Failing but too proud to admit it. probably struggling financially while pretending success. The gap between their fiction and my reality was so vast that I felt oddly detached. These weren't people who knew me at all. The waiters had just cleared the main course dishes when Jessica set her plan in motion. She stood, tapping her water glass with a spoon to gain everyone's attention. Her expression was a practiced blend of concern and regret that I recognized from countless childhood setups. "Before dessert is served, I'd like to say something," she began, her voice carrying that pseudo-sympathetic tone she reserved for her most manipulative moments. "As we're all together celebrating Grandma's special day, I think it's important that we address the elephant in the room." She turned to face me directly. "Mike, we all love you, but we're concerned. For years, you've distanced yourself while claiming to be building this successful business in California. And we've tried to support your story. We really have." My father nodded solemnly. My mother looked down at her lap. "But family means honesty," Jessica continued. "And because I care about you, I felt it was necessary to get the actual facts about your situation." She reached into a large handbag beside her chair and withdrew a manila envelope. "I hired a professional investigator," she announced to gasps from several relatives. "Not to invade your privacy, but to help us understand what you're really going through so we can support you properly. I have copies for everyone." With a flourish worthy of a courtroom drama, Jessica distributed printed reports around the table. I accepted mine calmly, noticing my grandmother's raised eyebrow and slight headshake as she received hers. "I think once we all review this information, we can have an honest conversation about moving forward as a family," Jessica concluded, resuming her seat with the satisfied expression of someone who believes they've delivered a winning argument. A heavy silence fell as everyone began reading. I sipped my water and watched their faces, particularly my parents and Jessica. For several long moments, confusion flickered across their expressions, followed by disbelief, and finally, the dawning realization that something had gone very, very wrong with their plan. My father's face flushed dark red as he flipped through pages. My mother's hand went to her throat. Jessica frantically skimmed the document, her confident expression crumbling with each page she turned. The private investigator had been thorough, perhaps more thorough than Jessica had anticipated or budgeted for. The report contained professional photographs of me entering the glass-fronted headquarters of Sentinel Systems, where our company logo was prominently displayed. Public records of our company's funding rounds and valuation. A copy of the recent industry magazine profile. Photos of my waterfront condo and the luxury vehicle in my designated parking space. A client list including Fortune 500 companies. Press mentions of our security innovations. My approximate net worth, based on my company. Equity. One by one, family members looked up from the reports. Some with shock, others with barely suppressed amusement. A few, like my cousin Thomas, caught my eye and gave a subtle thumbs up, appearing genuinely pleased at this turn of events. When everyone had finished reading, all eyes turned to Jessica, whose face had drained of color, then to me. The silence stretched uncomfortably until my grandmother broke it with a gentle laugh. "Well, Jessica, I must say this was quite informative, though perhaps not in the way you intended." I closed my report and placed it on the table. "Thank you for clearing things up, Jessica," I said, my tone calm, neither gloating nor angry. "I've been fairly private about my business success, so this saves me the trouble of explaining." "I don't understand," my mother finally managed, her voice faint. "You never told us about any of this." "You never asked," I replied simply. "And when I did share achievements in the past, they weren't acknowledged." My father, never one to admit defeat, attempted to recover. "Well, good for you. Making something of yourself out there. Must have been those business instincts you got from my side of the family." Jessica remained speechless, staring at the report as if hoping its contents might somehow change if she looked long enough. "Perhaps now we can focus on what's important," I suggested, turning to my grandmother. "Celebrating Grandma Eleanor's 80 years of wisdom and grace." My grandmother squeezed my hand under the table, her eyes twinkling with something that looked suspiciously like pride. "An excellent suggestion. I believe dessert is ready. A chocolate cake that I'm told is divine." As waiters entered with the birthday cake, the attention shifted away from me and the failed exposure attempt. Conversation resumed, awkwardly at first, then with increasing normalcy as relatives processed what had occurred. Jessica excused herself before dessert, mumbling something about a phone call. She returned 20 minutes later, red-eyed, but said nothing further about the investigation. My father attempted forced joviality, suddenly treating me as if we'd always been close. My mother alternated between trying to take credit for my success. I always encouraged your interest in computers, and acting wounded that I hadn't shared more details with her. Throughout it all, I maintained a pleasant, dignified demeanor, neither rubbing their noses in their miscalculation nor accepting their revisionist attempts to claim supportive roles they had never played. The victory wasn't in proving them wrong. It was in no longer needing them to be right. As the evening drew to a close, I found a moment alone with my grandmother. "I always knew you would find your way," she told me quietly, even when they couldn't see it. After the dinner, I expected to feel triumphant or vindicated. Instead, I experienced something quieter, more profound, a sense of closure. As I helped my grandmother into her coat, she asked if I could spare a few minutes before returning to my hotel. "There's something I want to give you," she explained. We arranged to meet at her apartment in the senior living community. When I arrived, she was waiting in a comfortable sitting room decorated with photographs spanning decades. I noticed several recent photos of me, ones I'd included in birthday cards, prominently displayed. "You noticed," she said, following my gaze. "I've always kept track of you, Michael, even when you needed your distance from the others." She crossed to an antique secretary desk and unlocked a small drawer, removing a velvet box that she placed in my hands. "This was your grandfather's. I want you to have it." Inside was a beautiful vintage Patek Philippe watch, its gold case engraved with my grandfather's initials. "Grandpa James never had much patience for your father's ways," she confided. "He would have been proud of how you've handled yourself." I was speechless, both at the gift and the revelation. "You know," she continued, settling into her armchair, gesturing for me to sit opposite her, "I cut ties with my own brother for 20 years. This was family history I'd never heard. "Really? What?" "He was cruel, manipulative, always needed to be the center of attention, and would hurt anyone who outshone him." Her description sounded uncomfortably familiar. The family was scandalized when I stopped speaking to him. "Back in those days, you simply didn't do such things." She leaned forward, her eyes sharp despite her age. "But sometimes, Michael, protecting yourself is more important than maintaining appearances. I recognized what was happening to you because I lived something similar. I just didn't have the courage to step away until much later than you did." We talked for nearly 2 hours, sharing perspectives across generations about family dynamics, healing, and the courage to chart one's own course. When I finally rose to leave, she held my hands in hers. "Don't let tonight pull you back into old patterns. You've built something beautiful in California. That's your life now. Will you come visit?" I asked impulsively. "I'd love to show you San Francisco." Her smile was radiant. "I would like that very much." In the days following the dinner, the reactions from family members began filtering in through texts, calls, and emails. My parents attempted multiple approaches to re-establish control over the narrative and over me. My father called first, his voice carrying an unfamiliar tone of respect, layered over his usual authoritative manner. "That's quite a business you've built, son. Always knew you had potential. We should talk about investment opportunities sometime." When I didn't immediately engage, my mother tried next, her message laden with attempted guilt. "We're hurt that you kept your success from the family, Michael. After all we did to raise you and support your education. Families should share in each other's good fortune." Jessica's approach was perhaps the most transparent, a carefully worded non-apology sent via email. While my methods may have been unorthodox, my intentions were to bridge the gap in our family. "Obviously, there was a misunderstanding about your situation. Perhaps now that everything is in the open, we can move forward positively, as siblings should." I responded to each with brief, polite messages that maintained my boundaries while refusing to engage in recriminations or debate. "Thank you for reaching out. I'm glad Grandma had a wonderful birthday celebration. I'm currently focused on some major projects at work, but wish you well." The most surprising development came from Ethan, who called to tell me he had finally confronted our parents. "After seeing how they tried to rewrite history with you at dinner," he explained, "something just snapped. I told them I remembered exactly how they dismissed your achievements and favored Jessica." Mom cried and Dad stormed out. But for the first time, I didn't back down or apologize. "How did that feel?" I asked. "Terrifying. Then amazing, he admitted. I'm looking at apartments in Seattle. Think I need some physical distance, too. You always have a place to stay in San Francisco, I offered. My return to normal life in San Francisco felt like stepping back into reality after a strange dream. I processed the dinner and its aftermath in sessions with Dr. Winters, unpacking the complex emotions triggered by the confrontation. What surprised you most about the experience? She asked. That I didn't need their validation anymore, I realized. Seeing their reaction to the investigator's report didn't feel like winning. It just confirmed we exist in different realities. That's significant progress, she noted. You went from seeking their approval to recognizing it's neither available nor necessary. My friends and Catherine provided additional support, listening to the full story with appropriate outrage and humor. Catherine, who had worried about the emotional fallout, was relieved to see me return largely unscathed. You seem lighter somehow, she observed a week later. Like you set down a weight you'd been carrying. She was right. Having my success acknowledged, even if through such unusual circumstances, hadn't healed family wounds, but it had removed any lingering doubt about my decision to leave. The experience had confirmed what therapy had been helping me understand. The problem had never been me. As the weeks passed, I established clear boundaries. I maintained regular calls with my grandmother, planning her visit to San Francisco. Ethan and I spoke weekly, our relationship growing stronger. I responded briefly but cordially to messages from extended family who reached out respectfully. With my parents and Jessica, I maintained minimal, surface-level contact, acknowledging cards but declining invitations for visits. When pressed, I would simply state, I'm open to a respectful relationship, but I'm not willing to pretend our past dynamics were healthy or to resume them. 6 months after the birthday dinner revelation, Sentinel Systems received an acquisition offer from one of the largest cybersecurity firms in the country. The offer would make me financially independent for life and allow our technology to reach a much wider market. As my team and I navigated the complex negotiations, I reflected on how different my life had become from what my family had expected or what I myself might have envisioned had I remained in their limiting narrative. The lessons I learned through this journey weren't about revenge or vindication. They weren't even primarily about success, though professional achievement had played a role in my healing. The most valuable insights were much more fundamental. First, that success doesn't heal family wounds. Even with objective, undeniable evidence of my achievements, my parents and Jessica couldn't acknowledge their role in our dysfunctional dynamic. The problem had never been my worthiness. It had been their inability to see it. Second, that some relationships cannot be repaired, not because forgiveness is impossible, but because genuine change requires acknowledgement and accountability that some people are simply incapable of offering. Third, that family is defined by love and support, not merely by blood. The connections I had built with friends, colleagues, and chosen family provided the authentic recognition and encouragement that my biological family could not. Fourth, that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential for health and growth. Walking away from toxic relationships had freed energy for building a meaningful life aligned with my values, rather than constructed in reaction to criticism. Fifth, that peace doesn't require vindication. The moment of revelation at my grandmother's birthday dinner had been satisfying, yes, but the real victory was in no longer needing that moment to validate my worth. As I look back on the path that brought me here, I feel gratitude rather than bitterness. Cutting ties with my toxic family wasn't an ending, but a beginning. The start of a life built on authenticity rather than approval-seeking, on genuine connection rather than obligation, on self-worth rather than external validation. If you're facing similar struggles with family relationships, remember that you deserve to be valued for who you are, not diminished for who others want you to be. Your worth isn't determined by those who cannot see it clearly. Sometimes the healthiest choice is to step away and build a life that reflects your true potential, rather than staying trapped in others' limiting perceptions. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family obligation and self-preservation? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. Like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose their own well-being. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, the family that matters most is the one that truly sees and celebrates you, whether related by blood or by choice.